that's what I had to do. So I know it sounds corny, but just make sure your loved ones or that your parents.
Today on Time We Discuss, I want to welcome back Pam Wood. Pam is here back on episode 9 as a voiceover artist, but this time it's time we discuss what it's like being a caregiver. So, Pam, welcome back, and thank you for joining me
Oh,
today on Time We Discuss.
thank you, Dan, so much. You're so kind. I do appreciate it.
Oh, no problem at all. It's absolutely, absolutely. So, what I want to talk about the kind of like the business side of being a caregiver.
Hmm.
Not everyone will necessarily be a caregiver for like an older relative or something like that.
Hmm.
But they might find themselves in a situation where they might have to maybe they have to give up work to care for someone or something like that.
Yeah,
And aside from the personal side of it, there could be some more of a the I'm gonna call it the business side of things, like all the paperwork that might have to get done and stuff like that. So let's kind of think
yeah,
about more of this from like a businessy perspective. So what's it
sure.
like as a caregiver?
A little backstory. My mom and I lived together for quite a long time, and um, we decided to merge households when my dad passed away, quite a long time ago. And, everything was going pretty good. I had, let's see, that was like 2000, it was right after 9/11. We're very much alike and we got along great. And then I'd say around 2014, I was teaching the local ballroom dance classes on Thursday nights. And all of a sudden, like getting ready to head out the door, and she would go with me. And she was all dressed and, freshened up and sitting in the recliner. And I had worked during the day, so I ran up to try get ready to change clothes. But as I was going up the steps, I heard something. And I looked over my shoulder and I could tell something, even from the back of the chair, didn't look right. And I guess looking back now, perhaps she passed out for no reason that I knew of. Um, and long story short, from that moment on, little by little by little, things started creeping in. Truthfully, to this day, I still don't know exactly what the diagnosis was from then. But so for the next 2014, um, things started to backslide just a little bit, just a little bit. And I was still working. And as things progressed a little bit, I thought I was actually went to part-time at my job. I was able to actually have benefits and still work. It was wonderful, and still have the insurances and whatnot. But it got to the point where I needed to be home. Just some days would be really good, and other days she wouldn't feel good and didn't know what to do, and I didn't want to leave her by herself. And so I left that job at the end of 2015, and then I worked from home doing some online work for the next couple of years. But as things progressed, I knew that we probably needed to look at just some part-time sitters. Um, and that's a whole nother broadcast, but we were very fortunate at that time. There was a local small agency, and that person, I reached out to them, and they actually brought the candidate, to the house so we could meet them. And we were very fortunate, and we met two that I remember, lovely ladies, that they came to the house a couple days a week for a few hours. Excuse me. And that way I could still work, back in my little den office, and they would be there for just, they weren't medical, just companions, but could help get her a snack, just be a companion to her. She was a people person, and she liked to, talk and be around folks. And then again, as things progressed, I guess getting into like 2021 or so, I'm guessing. Um, she was having trouble getting around, and so we started having to look at, walkers around the house and things like that. And so, you need to think about if you're going to be for looking for a sitter. A lot of them closed down, I believe. This little small business that I depended on to get help for her had closed because of COVID. They weren't sending people into the homes. And so then you start relying on word of mouth. So you can contact your local Office on Aging, which is where I worked. I was a benefits counselor for 5 years. So I kind of knew the ins and outs, fortunately. But do check with your senior center in your county. You can find that usually online, in your state and in your county. They had a huge list of sitters, but they're not vetted. So, probably 10 pages of sitters and not in any particular order. So you kind of go through and find one in your county that's nearby that you could call. Some will do a little more heavier lifting than others. Some just want to be a companion. So you have to, be very honest what you need. You need transferring from, you know, a chair to the walker to the potty. What are you comfortable with? So, um, and then you have to negotiate your salary. So if it's with an agency, it's probably going to be more. If it's word of mouth, you've got maybe a little more wiggle room uh, to work with them on that. And then certainly talk to your tax person on both ends. So the person who is paying and the person who is receiving, you need to separately talk to that would be my, recommendation. Talk to them, see what you have to, claim, etc. So, we always want to be on up and above board, with that kind of thing. Um, and then as again, things continued to progress. And so finally in 2024, um, I talked my mom into, well, actually, we did it in 2023, and she was absolutely not interested in me searching out hospice services. Now, that being said, if you keep up with that, hospice is not just for the last 6 months of your life. They have palliative care, they have hospice care. It's just a gentle extra set of eyes and ears, hands to help a family. And I'm it. I was it. There was no other family nearby. Everybody, a sibling was 2 hours away, nieces and nephews, 6, 7 hours away. So I was it. And so I knew I needed some help because as the caregiver, you just end up working on fumes.
So let me stop you right here for a
Yes.
second. So talking about the companions, I want to go back to that briefly.
Yes.
Okay, so how, aside from out of your own bank account or your loved one's bank account, is
Hmm.
there another way to fund that? Does like Medicare, Medicaid, something like that cover that, or Social Security, or like no, it's completely on you, your loved one, to cover that?
I'm going to say out on a limb that it's going to be up to the family to cover that. Now, that being said, I'm in Maryland and I didn't really look into it until it was too late, but I do believe there are or is a program where family members can get some compensation from the state. But I don't want to say that for sure. So I would say check with your state office on aging, check with your local senior center, see what they can help you with. But I would say be prepared. Be prepared. And sadly, some of these rates from agencies, um, they charge sometimes even more on overnight shifts. We didn't have to do that, but I was seriously thinking of it. And so I don't want to say how much because I don't want anybody coming back and blasting us, but um, they serve a purpose, and that's when they're covered and taxes are taken care of, and all of that is the good side of working with an agency. But to be a little more reasonable in your budget, if you can find somebody by word of mouth that somebody else trusts implicitly or you trust implicitly, that's also a good option. So
Okay, okay,
I'm
good
not, I'm sure
information.
I can't really answer that for you, but I would say check with your state or county office on aging.
Now that's still very, very good information. Gives people a bit of a starting point. So
Yes.
then you also talked about hospice care, and you mentioned that
Mhm.
it's not just for the last 6 months. And I've heard that before, that there are different
Yes.
stages of it. But one thing I
Yes.
don't know, how do you even start that process? So when you were starting to thinking about hospice care,
Hmm.
where do you even go for that?
We have a wonderful local hospice in our county, and they serve 4 counties, but their main office is like 15 minutes from me. And so last year, when I called and just inquired, um, we shut it down when my mom said no, she wasn't interested in that. But when it became very evident that I needed some extra services, I called, I found out, for them, the difference. and I'll say these are all just based on my experiences, Dan, and what happened with my family. So I don't want to assume, but check with your local hospice organization that serves your county. Wonderful, wonderful angels, all of them, from nurses to chaplains to bereavement counselors. Just magnificent is all I can say. um, but in what they told me was that palliative versus um, hospice was basically you keeping your doctor's appointments. They would do follow-ups of some sort, but you would still go to your own doctor. Hospice, basically everything is done through them. You are turned over to their physician. They make the prescriptions, and whatever the needs are, it's done through that physician. And that's what we did because it was getting, I don't want to say closer, but it would just have been a lot easier for me physically to let them come to us than to try to get mom to it was just becoming very, very difficult for her to maneuver in any way. So I was very blessed for that. And so with the hospice, um, I will say one thing, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn because I think the staff at a local hospice would probably say, yeah, you're right, is that once you're in, and it only took like a day. I mean, they had mom's records checked and approved by the doctor, and you are approved for hospice. I mean, it went very, very fast. But what was a little unsettling for the patient, because mom was aware. I mean, she had some forgetfulness, but she knew when the phone was ringing, and she knew, things were going on. But we got a lot of calls from our team. All right. So once we were in, we had a team, a nurse, physical therapist, chaplain, volunteer services, social worker, intake nurse. I mean, so we were getting calls like at least once a week from the different um, categories or departments because they are falling under Medicare and they have to do their initial check-in a certain amount of time, I'm understanding. And then after that, you can decline a visit. Chaplain calls and you're not in need of that particular month, then, they don't have to come out, but they do have to do their initial visit. Okay. So that's just kind of be prepared for that, coming from hospice, but they're available pretty much on a dime, with phone calls and off hours even. There is a nurse call agency, or call center that will dispatch nurses on weekends and nights. And it's just another set of eyes and ears that you can call and have them check. Hey, mom, this is happening this morning with mom. Any chance you can come this afternoon, even if you've had your weekly visit? Aside from the wonderful services of hospice, in our chat today, Dan, I wanted to share some, how do I say this in audiobook terms, post-production work, things that if you're going to be the executor or personal representative for a family member, or if you yourself are preparing what your family may need. My parents left me a folder. It was probably 35 years old that they prepared for me. And every time they wanted to talk to me about it, I cried. They were like, straighten up. We want to go over this stuff with you. But it was so helpful. So I want to make sure, and I tell this for a reason, to make sure that you are leaving your correct information as far as your date of birth and your social security number, but more so that date of birth. And the reason I'm such a proponent on this is I had to call my mother's pension offices. So she had worked for the federal government and the state government, and so I had a couple phone calls to make. And when I called one of the offices, and they were all very, very kind, I so appreciated it. I had to verify, that I was the personal representative and whatnot. And so I had to verify her date of birth for one thing. And the gal said, no, I'm sorry, that's not what we have on file. And I'm like, well, that's her date of birth. I started second guessing myself. And I said it again like two or three times. She says, no, I'm sorry. And she couldn't divulge it, right? So she was being recorded, federal government. She couldn't say yay or nay. And so I sat on the phone for like a minute or two. And then I thought, oh, their anniversary was the same month as her birthday. So I said, hey, is it by chance this date? And do you know it was? Except the year, of course. So they had her date of birth listed as the correct month, but the wrong day. And had I not discovered that, that would have been in their system, it would have been incorrect. So I had to, luckily, I had a copy of her ID, state ID, although she was not driving, but they said send them a copy of the ID and circle her date of birth and send it to us. And that's what I had to do. So I know it sounds corny, but just make sure your loved ones or that you know your parents' date of birth and that you're not off by one day or 1 year. That's a biggie. And of course, social security numbers, because your children, not necessarily adult children, are going to know your social security number. You might need some information on your parents, grandparents, their date of birth. May or may not need it, but I needed to share some information. Um, my parents also documented for me all the phone numbers to the pension offices, which I could easily have found, but it was so helpful. This was all just handwritten in a folder. This had nothing to do with their will. This was something that they had handwritten to me so I could just pull it out and take care of things. So the pension offices, contact number, or it might be the retirement office, retiree office. It's very helpful to have that written down. I would also say if you feel you need it, obtain an estate attorney to help you get through some of the mishmash that you have to go through. Uh, it didn't even occur to me that I was going to have to contact the local register of wills. And I will tell you, in our county, I talked to one of them yesterday. They were absolutely wonderful. I cried the whole time I was in there, and they were so sweet and so kind, and just you know, kind of directed me on what to do. And every state is different, every county is different, and something in your family's what they've left behind may determine or dictate whether or not you need an estate attorney. It might be based on the funds that they're leaving behind. Um, Maybe here's the line, and if it's less than this, you can do it yourself, and if it's more than that, we recommend an estate attorney. And I'm very thankful that the one I have is my age, and he works by himself. He works out of his home. He does all the necessary running around down to get, any papers on my behalf. And so, yeah, you're paying for it, but it's worth it. Um, Asking for original death certificates, which typically I think your funeral home will order those for you. And yes, you have to pay for them, but I think I ordered like 15. It's probably way too many, but I knew that everybody and their brother was going to need an original. But I also got some color copies made. And so for the places that didn't need the original, that a copy was sufficient, you give them that. And you don't need to have that back. And one final thought that came to me was when you're closing out bank accounts and checking accounts, I think I closed out because that was on their that was on their directions. Close out bank, close credit card. I mean, they thought of everything. So, but I think I closed it out a little too soon. I think I closed them out about 6 weeks after she passed because I kept hearing that the banks really don't want to keep those accounts open. Um, but I would have waited a little bit longer. And the reason why is some of those places want their money back after someone has died. They're prepaying the pensions or Social Security, and if they've died before that next payment, they want that money back, and so they'll go in and electronically pull it back out. So in my case, I think Social Security had already done it, but by the time one of her other pensions got around to it, that account was already closed. So there was no money to take out. So they contacted the bank, which had the checking account, and then the bank sent me in their envelope this information that, kind of be on the lookout for this. And sure enough, about, I don't know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, I got the official letter from the government saying, we need that money back. So I would say maybe ask your attorney or ask somebody who's in the know, but I would say maybe wait just a little longer on closing those out. But I wouldn't wait a year or 6 months, but get some advice on that time frame. But those were some things that I really wanted to share today because they were so helpful. So if you're my age and you have adult children, start that packet, tuck it away where they know where it is at all times. If you move, whatever, tell them it's going to be in this cabinet or this drawer. But if you're my age and your parents are still living, make sure you're getting their correct information. Date of birth, social security number, important numbers like that you're going to need on their behalf when
That
the
is
time
all
comes.
really, really good information. And I'll actually add to that. So, me and my family, we were raised Catholic.
Hmm.
And in the Catholic religion, when you are confirmed, usually around like 11, 12, 13, something like that,
Hmm.
you take on a new middle name.
Oh,
And with my parents and even my oldest brother, they took on their new middle name. They started using it, but they never actually legally changed their middle name.
oh,
And that's
yes.
created all kinds of headaches for them now. And I can only imagine,
Oh,
if they die and people don't, or I should say when they die, if people don't know about that, that could also
right.
be a very, very big challenge because they're looking for one middle name and it's actually another middle name.
Wow. Excellent point. And also now with that new ID that we have to present, if you're married and you never changed it, and it doesn't match. Oh, there's just so many things to be thinking about. So, yeah, just make sure names are matching. And I mean, I just couldn't get over that date of birth was not correct in a government database.
Yes,
And it
yes.
scared me because I was like, well, I think I'm dreaming. I know it's boop, boop, boop. And she said, no, I'm sorry. That's not what we have on record. And then it just hit me that it was their anniversary.
So one other thing I want to share too, my brother-in-law is power of attorney for his parents. And what we've found is that when working with different organizations, they have their own power of attorney form that he needs to fill out, that they don't accept the one that he got from, I guess it was my
Oh,
in-laws estate attorney, I guess is who it is.
right,
But
right.
he has to go and like go through these extra hoops, and it's with more than one organization, which is very frustrating because it's like, why did we do what I say we loosely? Why did
Right, right.
he, go take all this effort for the power of attorney, and he has to go through all these other hoops with all these other organizations for more power of attorney documents? It's ridiculous, ridiculous.
It is. I think I'd be having the attorney call that.
Yeah, really.
I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Absurd,
I know.
absurd.
Well,
Oh,
and another thing too, and just quickly on that, for power of attorney, and the medical, the durable power of attorney. Is that the medical? Is that the no? One's financial. I know one's financial, one's the medical. But let's say the son is listed as for the medical, but the son moves away. And you don't think about it for 5 or 10 years, and that's still sitting there, and he's really not close enough to help make any final decisions. So check that too. Make sure that those people are up to date. They're living near you if needed, so that you don't have to fly in, or I mean, that's the things that I would think of. So
yeah, that is very, very good information as well. Absolutely. Pam, I am running short on time,
sure.
unfortunately. But like last time, one thing I like to do whenever I'm speaking with someone, I like to give them the opportunity to talk about a cause they believe in, a project they're working on, more about their business. So if there's something
Mhm.
specific you'd like to talk about, the floor is yours.
Well, I would just say look into your hospice palliative care organizations, support them, and don't think it's too late. Like there is such a thing as the anticipatory grief. Your loved one is still here, but you're struggling. You know, get in with them, get some either spiritual counseling or whatever you feel you might need, believe me, when you start to unpack some of that, it is so helpful. So call them, look into them, visit them, and I'm sure that when the time comes, if you need that extra support, that would be a good choice.
That is fantastic. Mental health is so important. I was actually speaking with Anne Ruane. She is a Reiki master. I was speaking
Oh,
with her
okay.
recently, and she was also echoing the importance of mental health. And I know I had a
Yes.
mental health professional on the show earlier in the season, John's, or I should say last year. So I'll put a link up there somewhere for people to check out his card. But
Uh-huh.
mental health is super important. So absolutely, thank you for sharing all of that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate you.
Absolutely appreciate you as well. And again, thank you so much for being on Time to Discuss and we learn what it's like to be a caregiver.
My pleasure.